Just some guy talking here, and I talk a lot about arguing, debating, discussions, whatever you want to call them. I talk a lot about it. How to engage in them differently, more compassionately, more empathetically, more efficiently, things that work for me, things that don't work for anybody, like using facts, if you watch my last video. And it kind of brought me to this observation that I've had in the back of my mind for a while, but I've never talked about it really. And that is that I don't think that we usually know what it is that we are arguing about. What does that mean? It means that usually when we engage in these discussions, these debates, these arguments about a big ticket item in particular, like politics or religion or social issues or any, name your poison, we tend to think that we are arguing about the particular thing that brought us into this conversation, right? A policy, an action, a person, a perspective, etc. And that I've got my facts about this, I'm going to present them to you, you've got your facts on this, you're going to present them to me, we're going to kind of go back and forth, and one of us is going to declare ourselves a winner, or we will agree to disagree, etc. And we think that this whole discussion is about the issue that we're using words to describe. But in many cases, the roots of this go much, much deeper. And while we're having this discussion, this debate, we are in many cases having a completely different discussion that neither one of us is paying attention to, giving care to, or time to, or trying to address. And that is that instead of arguing an issue, it's very possible that we are arguing an identity. And that is a completely different thing. If I'm trying to convince you that I'm right on a particular issue, the risk is that the risk to you is that if I win that argument, that I will fundamentally alter your sense of identity, what group you belong to, what your history is, what your personal experiences, and how you understand those things. That is a seismic shift in your perspective that has nothing to do with whether or not I'm right about this policy or whatever it is, right? It has everything to do about who you are. And if I don't recognize that in engaging in this, that I am, I'm running the risk, or you're running the risk of having me fundamentally alter your sense of self, then there are obstacles in this course of conversation that I am not addressing and making any attempt to navigate around, go over, etc. I'm not addressing them. And that makes a lot of these debates, a lot of these conversations a non-starter. What is the cost to you if I'm right and you're wrong? That is a question that I need to ask myself more, because in understanding that that is a legitimate question that should be asked, I might be better able, more likely to consider what some of the responses are that you give me, what some of the reluctance and hesitancy and some outright aggressiveness that you might have towards me, and the argument that I'm making. So I can sit here and go, how can you look at this set of facts and not change your mind? Right? And that seems like a very logical question. But if I ask myself, what is the cost to you if you change your mind? It takes a completely different perspective. It takes a completely different timbre, because now I can understand that there is a legitimate fear that you might have that if I change your mind, that if you're wrong about this, then what else are you wrong about? And how do you have to reevaluate and redefine who you are and what you think, who you interact with, who your friends are, etc. There are just a myriad of different consequences to having that kind of seismic shift to your perspective. So I'm not saying that that's fine, whatever group you belong to. I'm not making a value judgment about that. There are certain groups that you might align yourself with that I'm not going to be okay with regardless. And if I can get you out of that group, then, I feel like maybe I've done a good thing for the world and for you. That's just my perspective, and I might be wrong. I probably am. But regardless, there are certain groups out there that if you're a part of them, I don't agree with it. I don't think it's right. I think that there's certain things that, you just shouldn't be a part of. But that doesn't negate the fact that you have incorporated belonging to this group into your identity, whatever that is. And that if I am changing your mind about this, that I might be changing what your identity is. And if I'm arguing about who you are, not about what you think, then I have no right to expect that you're going to go, easily into that dark night, right? And it's not just the big ticket items. I started there because it's a very dramatic example. I think it's one that's, foremost in a lot of people's minds these days, but it happens in much smaller things too. We have a lot of arguments, discussions in our day to day lives that have nothing to do with what we're actually using our words to talk about. We might be arguing about how, we feel about, where the furniture placement is in our house. But really, what you're arguing about is whether or not that person or I give you enough credit for what your, um, interior design choices are, and maybe that is a big key thing about you, right? Or we might be arguing about what our favorite color is, and like why blue is better than green. And but the fact that you love green is tied to everything. Maybe that, like, you have this, and it's a stupid example, but you get what I get. You get what I'm trying to say. We have these discussions all the time where if we stopped to think about what we are actually arguing about, we would approach it much differently. If I understand the cost to you in, seeing my point of view and really kind of empathizing with where I'm coming from, if I understand that there is a cost to that, I'm much more likely to approach that discussion with you a lot more compassionately, a lot more empathetically, and therefore a lot more efficiently and effectively. um, if I am giving, if I'm taking the time to make sure that you understand that if you're ultimately wrong in this argument, that's not me making a statement about you as a person, but about you and your perspective on this particular item or issue or concern of mine, then I'm much more likely to use better words, better approaches, better tactics, to make it a lot more productive for both of us. I'm going to stop there. I feel like I've dug a lot up here, but I encourage you to take a look at some of the discussions that you have in your life, whether they're big or little, and understand that a lot of times people are using that particular issue to, air pain or frustration that they have about other things. And if you can take a few extra steps to try to dig to the root cause, you might get a lot further along in a relationship or a debate or a discussion than you do if you just focus on the surface issue, and try to, and get frustrated about the fact that that person isn't agreeing with you or seeing your point of view and vice versa. That's it. I'm just some guy talking. I'll talk to you next time.